right, so I want to jump to our next topic, and that is full self-driving. Now we're going to get a little deeper into Tesla and also comma.ai. The two companies, when you look at, and I've had a chance to see a ton of comma.ai's videos and kind of their real life. I don't know if you saw the Lex ride along that he did last year with George. That was a very interesting one in the sense that it showed it, but I was surprised at the size of the team at comma.ai and also kind of just their facility in general, which, you know, scrappy startups, much like we are here at this network. But when you look at what George is doing and his perception of what comma.ai is, being the Android and Tesla being the Apple, my question is, could comma.ai actually be closer to a solution than where Tesla is right now? What are your thoughts?
I think the analogy that you used and the one that George has mentioned on a couple of interviews I've heard is exactly right. Tesla, Apple, they are full stack. They do the hardware. They put the cameras in the right places. They do the software. They actually even design their own self-driving chips. And then from all of that, they have a solution. Whereas comma.ai is, they run on a software called Openpilot, which is open source. You and I could pick it up, drive around and have some ideas and, like, you know, pull requests toward it and update it. So totally like Android. That's how Android is, versus iOS, which is completely secret. No one's touching iOS. Apple controls every part of it. Now there's pros and cons to both. The more open you are, the more vulnerabilities potentially that you could be introduced to. That's kind of the stuff that Apple prides itself on, as being a little more closed off, a little more secure. But there's no reason why you couldn't mitigate around those things and make sure that you do have a high quality bar. So I think that analogy is probably as fitting as can be. And as far as who gets there first, I think even George says Tesla will be first and we'll be second. Isn't that right? Isn't that what he says?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, he's like they're right behind him or on their heels. Of course, it all depends on, you know, how fast the rollout comes with FSD.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how many monthly active users that comma.ai has today, but first and foremost, a lot of people have never even heard of them. They're actually here in San Diego as well. I need to chat with them. Yeah. But imagine if word of what they're doing gets out and people buy that little box that they offer. Well, then we would potentially see a world where millions of people are using it and the data aggregation increases and suddenly that lead that we all think of Tesla as having starts to disappear pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that's going to be the factor here when you look at all these different companies that really are making pretty heavy strides in this direction. Tesla obviously being the one that gets the most press just because of their, just their whole stock presence in the marketplace. But I think that's going to be a scenario that we've got to watch closely. But the one that I think is interesting to me, which is this whole sentiment analysis that we did on Rever Labs on Robotaxi. This is on consumer acceptance. And data came in on a couple of things. First, I wanted to see who would purchase full self-driving once that the full version was released, maybe out of beta. I was a little bit surprised. It was about a third, a little less than a third that would go ahead and purchase the $10,000, if it was $10,000 at that time, because Elon's talking, by the time they roll that with full self-driving and it's no longer in beta, this thing could be much more expensive. So with that being the case, 100 or 10 grand, 30%. A lot of people said no, which kind of surprised me since it's mostly, Model 3 owners and up, somewhat more affluent, have that expendable income that could probably go ahead and do it, but have chose not to. And then a third of them came in with a $100 price tag on the subscription service. So all of that kind of surprised me in the sense of the rollout. With that being the case, and let's say Elon, we're on Elon time and maybe he's sandbagging a little bit and he is going to release this thing later this year. What do you think about that? Because that doesn't seem like a big adoption number to me.
Yeah, I don't know if you've, I don't know how your Twitter followers and stuff are, but a lot of my Twitter followers and my network is very kind of pro-Tesla. So it's this echo chamber where we get a very
you get in the bubble.
We get a very unrealistic
Yes.
We get a very unrealistic worldview. And this is, I've always said, is the danger of social media, because before you showed me these numbers, I'd be like, oh yeah, every Tesla owner is all about FSD and they trust it and they would use it. But it's like, actually, no, it's about 3 and 10, 30%-ish or 28%. So the numbers are a little bit lower than I thought. This kind of feeds into the aircraft model and the pilot, where we were talking about, even if the most incredible engineers are building the most incredible software, we kind of like the idea of a person with a hat on in the cockpit. So that will take time. And these are the sorts of things that just time is the answer. When more people are talking about, oh yeah, I just used one, it's great, you should try it. And then, are you sure? And then the third time someone hears it, they go, all right, I'll try one, and hey, it was great. And they start to believe, okay, it is safer and stuff. But also, we're in that middle ground where we're going to have human drivers and robo-taxi self-driving cars together. That's also kind of a crazy thing, because I mean, it's one thing to say there are no more human drivers. Every car is just a self-driving car on the road. That is easy because the human element is removed. But if the self-driving car has to account for this crazy person who is irrational and gets road rage, that's tougher as well. I think for Tesla, going with the subscription model is the right move. And this is something I'm actually going to make a video about next week, but I guess you'll hear it here first. I actually have kind of I have a little bit of a maybe negative view on this FSD pricing model. So, and this is, I'm being a little bit speculative here, but if you get your driver's license and you operate a motor vehicle, you have to have a certain vision, right? You have to be able to pass an eye exam. It doesn't matter if you get corrective lenses or glasses, but you have to be able to see to get your driver's license. So part of me is wondering, so Tesla's cameras are pretty low resolution. They're like 1 or 2 megapixel cameras. And you can tell when you take your dash cam footage out, it's really quite low quality.
It's grainy.
The good news there is the lower the number of megapixels, the more light is hitting each part of that pixel. So you have better night performance, and you have less compute power required. I mean, if you're trying to
DSLR.
Exactly. Now, if you're trying to take this 8K image at 40 or 60 frames a second and process that, the amount of compute power required for that is massive compared to a small sensor array. But my point is, what is to say that 2 years from now, California says, okay, we have our self-driving car guidelines. We need a 4 megapixel camera at minimum. It needs to be 60 frames per second or higher. You have to have this much teraflops of compute power. You have to be able to make this determination. And they park your car, they put something 150 feet away and see if you can figure out what it is while it's moving, or some other kind of metric, right? I mean, this is what lawmakers are going to do. People forget about this part, oh yeah, Tesla, go ahead. We trust you. You'll be fine. That's not how it works. We're probably going to have some sort of requirement there. So my concern is, self-driving is not like a problem that you solve, mission complete, put your pencils down and go on holiday. You have to keep doing it. Tesla will have software update after software update. 5 years from now, 7 years from now, it'll never stop. The models will continually be training and growing. That's how this works. So for that reason, I don't think a one and done pricing model is actually going to be their smartest move for them. Think about Adobe and what they did with the pivot from going from $2,000 for Photoshop to now it's $50 a month for all their apps. That's a smart move because they keep improving it. Photoshop had a couple of new features in 2021, and because I keep paying them, they're incentivized to keep delivering on new features.
Right on.
So I think full self-driving is the same sort of thing. What's to say that Elon has claimed that your car comes with everything it needs for self-driving? I hope that's true because I have a Tesla, but might it be that my cameras actually are proved not to be sufficient and I need to do a complete hardware change or something? In which case, if I change the cameras, then maybe the entire self-driving computer has to be changed out. Maybe there's a whole slew of things. So keeping all that in mind, and also maybe the requirements upgrade and you need to continually have more and better hardware. A subscription model feeds into that better, I think. So I think Tesla's move to a subscription model is the right move because that allows them to keep upgrading and not just this one-time payment. And 5 years from now, I'm not getting any more money from you, but I'm continuing to have to improve your product to keep the full self-driving possible. So subscription, I think, is the answer to all of that. And I have this feeling that it'll tie better into what the future will look like in terms of regulatory requirements and stuff.
Yeah, we've done some analysis on the FSD versus subscription, but it was based and predicated upon a certain amount of adoption rate. Some other data that we pulled on this very topic, but we went away from the Tesla owners and went and targeted basically our questions to new car owners, or not new car owners, people who are getting ready to purchase a car or they're considering to be in the car market. And this was the numbers. 34% of new car buyers have considered EV, so that was a positive. That surprised me that it was that high.
That's pretty
9%,
good.
yeah, that's good. 9% of new car buyers would pay or want FSD. 9%. Now, granted, if you haven't owned a Tesla, you haven't seen that experience, so I think that would rise if someone actually got in a Tesla and got just Autopilot is in its own right has a certain amount of presence on itself. But 9%, very low. 67% of car buyers said that they would stated the EV would have to be lower cost than ICE due to range issues, so that's a common thing. And we saw Tesla do some kind of a roundabout on Toyota in terms of taking in the #1 spot on Consumer Reports. So with all those kind of things happening, people, because I look at this from a position of the consumers that are going to come in and buy EV and help toward our sustainable future. They're driving ICE cars right now, and they have to. My wife, one of those, she's slowly coming over. But she asks these questions all the time, and I've even asked her, would you do a FSD? Would you go full autonomy? And she's like a no. So with that being the case, and Tesla banking so much on full autonomy and just autonomy in general, and maybe the market not really being there, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So your wife uses Autopilot, I take it, right?
So she drives my Tesla. She won't use, I have to set it up for her. She's on chill mode. She does the whole no intervention. When I put it on autopilot and she's in the car, she's okay with it, but she doesn't really like it. So she's okay. Like that. She drives an X7, a BMW, which has lane assist, which is that one that's like really herky jerky. It starts to fade and it's just like bobs you back in. Which is the scenario, I guess, when you look at luxury car buyers and any car buyer that says less than 10% would even deploy full self-driving or an autonomous, pay for it. And Tesla's over here, and even if you listen to Kathy Wood and what ARC is, they're betting on autonomy as being Tesla's kind of, hidden gem of revenue for the future. But yet the consumer market isn't quite there yet. And I've had a chance to live through a lot of consumer science data, and I see these markets, they move a lot slower than everybody thinks. All of a sudden it's here, and you think it happened yesterday, but it was 5 years ago when the trend started moving. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the key to approval is just to get people in the seat. I've always said that. If you've, for me, and part of why I don't buy the FSD, the $10,000 package, is because the enhanced autopilot, whatever I get for free, is so good. Really, if I can get out on the freeway and I can put it in self-driving and it keeps the lane and drives from the car in front of me and does all of that, it doesn't change lanes and take exits and stuff, but just get on the road for 20, 30 miles at a time and just drive. To me, that is such a valuable thing. I drive from San Diego to the Bay Area. Often it's about 500 miles. Before, when I did it in my gas cars with no self-driving help, your mind is just fatigued. You're just fried. I'd get to my mom and dad's house and be like, I'll talk to you guys in the morning. I'm going to bed. Now I get there refreshed and ready to like, hey, how's everybody doing? Because there's just such low operator workload. Yeah. So I will never get a car today if it didn't have that. If you're telling me that I lose, that I don't care how, if it's an EV with more range, better performance, but you don't have that, I'm sorry, that's a deal breaker for me. You have to have that. So
see, I'm in your camp. I'm in your camp, and I'm just surprised at the low number of general consumers. And again, I think it's back to your point is that there just isn't enough of these people who've actually experienced the real technology that's out there today.
Yeah, it comes with time. There's just going to be, to your point, kind of an adoption curve and also kind of an acceptance curve for trust. But show the convenience off to somebody for like a weekend, especially if you're driving like a long distance.
Oh
It
man.
happens quickly,
Yeah,
for sure.
the adoption is like that fast. It's kind of like the iPhone was from the BlackBerry. And,
Right.
if you had a chance to live through that era, everybody thought the BlackBerry, which was the tried and true, king of kings, never going to be displaced. And boom, the iPhone came across, and before you knew it, it was there. Because it was the touchscreen interface that everybody didn't like in the beginning.
Right.
And that was, is that resistance to that moving. Last topic, or last point
Really
on
quickly,
this.
before we
Yeah,
switch
go
gears,
ahead.
just one last thing. The other thing that's happening as well is we have basically grouped self-driving with EVs, which is kind of actually a cool move. By the way, there's no reason why you can't have a self-driving gas car. Your wife's BMW X7, it
Sure.
could have sensors and drive itself too. There's first and foremost, but people have kind of made that connection. So to my mind, when you think about self-driving, you're thinking, oh, maybe I should go look at electric cars. So,
Yeah.
and the other way is true as well. I'm looking at electric cars. Maybe I should be okay with self-driving. So the two will like prop themselves up together in a good way, because talk about changing lives. If we had like robo-taxi networks where they
it'd be
operate
huge.
1 million miles without any real maintenance at all, no driver, you can get the cost per mile down cheaper than like a subway ticket. Suddenly you have more people involved in the economy. They can drive a little bit further to get to new job opportunities and raise themselves up. It's a complete game changer.
Yeah.
Loss of jobs from driver job
A
loss
lot
and
of
stuff
other
is another
industries,
topic.
you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
But
There's a
that's-
lot
yeah,
of domino effects that this really started. And listen, it's like any new technology. I remember, all kind of innovation that's occurring in Silicon Valley and beyond. There's always that domino effect. But to that point, Ricky, with comma.ai, if you go back to what George is doing over there, and you look at these numbers of low adoption, low interest, much lower than I thought, especially with Tesla being pretty much front page news almost every day. And to see that low of interest in full self-driving or autonomy, when you look at those numbers and then where comma.ai is going, because they are going that Android approach, which is to take that computer, pop it in that X7, wire that thing in, and bam, that's a self-driving vehicle. If they can't get to critical mass, is comma.ai too early? Before, it could be a 2025 play for comma.ai. I even saw a tweet, I think it wasn't by George, but it was by comma.ai. It says, and the question was, were they more likely to be acquired by an OEM or most likely? And their comment, or you probably saw this tweet, they said, no, we think we're going to acquire an OEM instead. So, which is, kind of brash, but could very well be the case with ICE cars,
I love
especially.
that quote. And I love George Hutz.
Very fun.
He's the right kind of person for this. You got to have those guys that really think big, kind of have that
Right.
reality distortion field, kind of Jobs and Musk.
Yeah.
He kind of, to me, fits in that category. Are they early? They're maybe a little bit early, but the cool thing is where they're investing will work long term. What I mean is they're investing in the software, however many customers that they have, whatever data that they have, they're using. And as more data becomes available, as more customers are online, that'll increase. But they are investing in the software and in all the right places. Compare that to like Waymo, who's buying cars, the CapEx is high, you're high definition mapping cities, you're building these little quirky cars and stuff. That investment, I don't think is going to pay off. Really, like the software is the part that pays off. So in that way, comma.ai is very smart. They're investing, they're spending the dollars on the stuff that will matter. So let's say they're a little bit early. Well, they're making some subscription money from their sales of their box. And maybe in a couple of years when people are ready, they have this really highly mature product because they've been investing on the parts that matter most.
Well, if they keep iterating on their innovation, like at least at the speed in which they seem to be doing so, I wish they would release more videos on, kind of the evolution of the software, because I would love to see how it handles, certain scenarios that, even a human driver has difficulty with in being able to operate a vehicle. And I think George would do it if maybe we just have to tweet at him enough to say, hey, we need, push out more videos of where you guys are today, because I think that would give me more faith on where comma.ai is going and whether or not they're at a pace in which they can be there at the, you kind of mentioned, at the precipice of when adoption meets technology. And everybody always asks, well, how do you know that? I just say, look at the iPhone. That's the example that you would have to use. And now it's everybody in the world, has an iPhone. Granted, there's a lot of Android users out there, no offense. But the point is that that adoption occurred, and now it's not even a second thought. So very interesting stuff for sure. I want to last comments on comma.ai, or are we good on that one?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I remember when the iPhone came out, I had friends who were thinking, oh my goodness, the entire industry is toast. It's gonna be everyone has an iPhone, like Samsung, who had this kind of Windows CE Palm Pilot thing, Palm Pilot and BlackBerry, they're all toast. And like within a year, Android comes out with not even like an entire calendar year, and its biggest rival was already on the scene. So the first thing is, I think the love for Tesla is, I can't even fathom how much people love Tesla. They think that what Tesla is doing is like so far above and beyond. And I mean, part of it is true. They are doing some incredible stuff that they can't even imagine anybody else having a shot at this. But typically in the technological wars, what happens is this approach, like the comma AIs or the cruises or Mobileye's doing some stuff. I need to know more about exactly where they stand. But suddenly you're not limited to just one car company, but if millions of cars are using this alternative approach, suddenly your advantages and stuff can shrink up pretty quick. And Apple only has 10 or 15 or 20% market share, clearly highly profitable, just like Tesla will be. Maybe other car companies won't have margins that Tesla will, but I think other people are going to solve this as well. And I think it's important that they do, because otherwise we'll live in a world where companies can charge you $10,000 for the luxury of it. And I'd rather not have that.